Good morning. Is this whoever's doing the sound? There you go. Okay. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today to visit with you a little bit about sustainability at K-State. Like most of us, you're asked to speak at different sort of things. And I remember Ben and Larry sent an invitation to speak to this several months ago. And I thought, oh man, that's a long time away, like many of us do on lots of things. And Noel and I, who are both speaking today, realized about 2 days ago that we had to give a speech this morning. So we've had several late nights trying to get ready for our presentations today. So what I want to visit with you a little bit about today is my perspectives on sustainability from a very broad sense. And so Ben and other speakers today are going to talk to you about specific things, but I'm going to talk more from a perspective of, as president or as leader of a land-grant institution, where do I think sustainability is going to fall in the grand scheme of things, and hopefully that'll get us thinking a little bit about, as we look at K-State in the next 15 years, what role will sustainability play in our future planning? And so really that's going to be my focus this morning. Well, let me just take a quick minute to sort of review our institutional profile and where we are, and this is going to sort of fit in with the grand scheme of things. We're about 23,500 students. We're actually 23,520 students, but I got the numbers yesterday, and being an anal retentive engineer, I actually added them up to make sure it actually does add up to 23,520. But, you know, roughly 18,500 undergraduates, 4,600 graduate students, and about 440 students that are enrolled in our veterinary medicine school. But so we're a medium-sized public university. Our annual budget, $645 million. If you look at the number of organizations that have a budget in excess of $500 million, you recognize just how big an institution that we are, not only to Manhattan, but to the state of Kansas and to this region. We're going to set a record year, $132 million in new grants and contracts. We're going to have the largest single increase in the history of the institution this last year. And what that means is our faculty and staff are out there hustling and getting more grants and contracts funded. But I think this is a terrific upward slope. Just to put this in perspective, in the year 2000, our number was about half of this. So in 9 years, we've essentially doubled our new grants and contracts coming into K-State. What this shows is that we're an institution on the move, certainly in terms of our research expertise, our national standing, and our ability to really do significant things. We have 37 faculty of distinction, and it doesn't mean that the rest of the faculty are not distinguished, but these are 37 of our faculty that hold endowed positions. If you look at 1,500 faculty, roughly, 37 is way, way too small a number, and this is going to be something that I'll certainly be working on, is to try and make that number a couple hundred over the next several years. And then our final thing is we're ranked number 67 by U.S. News and World Report of the top public schools in the national universities category. Okay, there's a lot of states that have nobody on that list, and I think this is a significant accomplishment. So the question is, if we look at all the other public universities, we're ranked in the top 70 public universities out there. Think of 50 states. This is a pretty exclusive list that we're already on. And most of this is pure recognition. That means they just ask people, what do you think are the best universities? And they list them out, and we're on that list. So we're a nationally ranked, recognized major university. We have a growing and thriving research enterprise. We have a medium size in terms of number of students with a nice balance between undergraduate and graduate students. So we're a profile of an institution that people not just care about, but are going to watch nationally what kind of things that we do. So what is the role of sustainability at a land-grant university in the 21st century? And let's spend just a minute. Of course, this is a typical presidential kind of speech thing. You go look at the definition of a word and start that way. The problem was my wife was going to use the same slide, and I'm going first, so she can't use it. But sustainable, and I won't read that to you, but the number 2 and A and B, I think, are really critical. Method of harvesting or using a resource so the resource is not depleted or permanently damaged, such as sustainable agriculture. Where I think this is really interesting is we're a land-grant institution, and agriculture is a strong part of our heritage. Just look at the university seal. Look at our original name. things like this. B, relating to a lifestyle involving the use of sustainable methods. And I think that's really one of the key things that we want to look at. Now, let's for a second also digress. What's a land-grant university? And this is directly taken from Wikipedia, so this is not my wording here. Land-grant universities basically were formed by the Morrill Act of 1862 and 1890, and we're one of the 1862 institutions. And us and Michigan State and several others all argue over who was the first land-grant institution, and it really depends on what state you're in. Kansas, we claim we're number one, and Michigan State claims they're number one, and Penn State or Rutgers says they're the first one, and you just rewrite the rules until it works. Anyway, but this is the key part here. We got this land, and the mission of these institutions that's set forth in 1862 is to focus on the teaching of agriculture, science, and engineering as a response to the Industrial Revolution and changing social class rather than the higher education's historic core of classical studies. Now, clearly we have branched out, and all land-grant universities are broader institutions in terms of their focus and mission than we were back in 1862. But I think it's interesting that, one, we look at sustainability, and it focuses on historically sustainable agriculture, and then more broadly lifestyles and things that we do that really make good use of our resources. And then we look at a land-grant institution that was sort of funded and started to deal with natural resource, mechanical arts kind of issues in an applied educational setting. So let's look, and you say, well, we always talk about land-grant universities, and I realize that I'm not going to ask anybody what the red star in the left-hand corner represents, but this is a mapping of all the schools that have land-grant designation. And the key thing is, and what I want you to get from this, is not try and read too much of it, but this is an exclusive and small set of institutions. Okay, most states have one, some have two, and then there was a second and third wave of schools that received land-grant designation. But the bottom line is, if we look in the United States, where got 50 or 60 of these schools that have the tradition and the background and the expertise and the base, I think, to really have an impact in the whole area of sustainability. So the other institutions that are out there can certainly do many wonderful things, and I know we'll hear about those today, but I don't think they're as uniquely positioned as some of these land-grant institutions are. So, given our emphasis on practical education, on agriculture, natural resources, land-grant schools should be, my contention is, the leaders in the sustainability movement in higher education from a broad sense. Now, there's some smaller colleges that have done some really terrific things with sustainability. But if I'm a small private institution located in some states, that allows me to do things so much differently than a large research university that's a public institution. So I think it's important that we consider this. And secondly, this is a wonderful opportunity for K-State to take a leadership position in the sustainability area in the Midwest. It doesn't mean we don't want to do it nationally, but I think if we look at where we recruit students from, companies we work with, and things like that, you can draw a pretty decent-sized circle in the Midwest, and that's going to constitute where we have an awful lot of our students going for when they graduate, companies that we work with, and so on and so forth. So I think this is sort of the direction we need to be looking in. So the other thing that of course I sit in my office and sometimes stare at the ceiling and worry about is this one. And Ben and I have had this conversation several times, and this is the presidential role in anybody. You bring an idea, and I say, well, I don't know how we're going to fund it. Okay, how do we move forward on sustainability in a resource-constrained environment? Obviously, higher education nationally is going through resource-constrained environment. They send you to presidential school, and they teach you words like that. I mean, basically, when we don't have as much money as we would like to use to fund the kind of things that we need to, and we're starting to get to a point where we're worried about how we're going to fund our basic educational enterprise. And I don't mean just Kansas State. This is public higher education in general in the country. So there's three things here that I think are really critical for us if we're going to have a successful program. One, we've got to focus on our institutional strengths. Now, I'm not going to list what I think the institutional strengths are. I haven't been here long enough. But if it's going to be successful, we got to take the stuff that we're really, really good at, and we got to work our sustainability things around that. Second, we've got to focus on sustainability measures that we can sustain indefinitely. Now, this may sound like a weird one, and I didn't want to use the word sustainable too often, but essentially, we've got to make sure that our sustainability program is sustainable so that we don't say, well, we're going to put a whole bunch of money into it, we do some stuff, we cut the money back, and before you know it, after 3 years, we don't have much of a program in place because we kind of artificially set it up. It's going to be important at K-State that when we look at doing things, we make sure it's the kind of thing that we say we can commit to doing this for a long period of time, and this is not going to be a 1 or 2 year deal. Okay, the final thing is we got to continue to have dialogue about campus sustainability efforts. I was asked at my interview in January, I guess it was, about my thoughts on sustainability. If I asked each of you in here to write down on a piece of paper what you think sustainability is, everybody would write something a little bit different. And that's part of the challenge of this topic, is you talk to somebody in architecture, they may have a certain set of things that they would deem as sustainable. Somebody in agriculture might have another set of things, and so on. We have to have dialogue on our campus, so when we talk about sustainability, we're all generally talking about the same set of things that are going to be critical to us. The final part of this, though, is we're going to have some tremendous successes. We've got bright, articulate, smart people that are all engaged in this. The reverse side to this, though, is, you know what, if we're aggressively trying some things, there are going to be some things that are not going to work very well. And part of the challenge in academia is we like to always add stuff, we don't like to subtract stuff. And so what the challenge will be is after we try something for 2 years, we need to be comfortable going, you know what, that's just not working as well as we thought it would, so let's take that resource and try something else. And I think if we're going to really have an active sustainability effort, there's some base things that we're going to do, but we got to be willing to try and take some risk, but also assess that risk and decide if it's not working to try something else. One of the things that a lot of you have, you've heard me speak, is talk about our long-term strategic plan. And the idea is, we're going to start this in January, is K-State 2025, and it's going to look out at where we would like to be in the year 2025. And I've got a lot of inputs to that. Athletics, NBAF, we want to enhance our reputation. We want to make sure we continue to hire and retain the most outstanding faculty and staff. We want to remain a student-centered research university. We got our land grant tradition. We want to increase our international presence. And each one of you could add your own set of things there. And what we want to do is put this together to greater national prominence. So there's some key milestones in this K-State 2025. We're going to have a lot of campus-wide focus groups that'll be in different colleges. There'll be alumni groups, departments, lots of things. We'll spend a semester doing this. Part of that is we're going to define the K-State educational experience. What does it mean to get an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree from Kansas State University? If you're an alumnus and you graduated in 1970, you graduate in 2000, you graduate in 2025, there's a common set of principles and things that you say, this is what made my educational experience what it is. And we need to articulate that as a university. And the reason for that is, as we look at planning and going to the future, you don't want to plan your way out of the things that got you where you are. And a lot of universities do this, have a wonderful strategic plan, maybe you achieve it, and you get there and you say, we got rid of some of the things that made us the university we are today. The third thing, and this is what's critical, is we want to choose 10 to 12 cross-cutting areas to focus on that will come out of this. So I'm not necessarily saying these are going to be, Kirk's going to pick his 10 favorite ones, and that's what's going to come out of this. We want to use this information to help develop and identify key areas across our campus. So what are some example areas that may pop out? And this was just me sitting down and picking out some particular things. But clearly, sustainability, I believe, is going to be one of those. And these are things that are not dependent on a particular academic unit. It's not, well, chemical engineering is going to work on sustainability, or this college is going to work on sustainability. It's going to be across all colleges and units, all faculty, staff, and students. These are the kind of things we want to identify and then be able to focus on. Other things might be global awareness, undergraduate educational experience, entrepreneurship, research and scholarship, lots of different things. Most of you could come up with 10 or 12 broad things. And you say, well, Kirk, why only 10? You know, we're a broad university. You just already talked about we're doing all this stuff. The problem is if we have 35 of them, then it looks like there's no focus. If we pick 2 or 3, that's tremendously focused, but we probably ignore too much of a large organization. So I think 10 to 12 ought to be the kind of things that if we do this well, and somebody catches you, at Kites in the evening having a Diet Coke, and they say, what are our 10 sustainability efforts? That's what I always have when I go to Kites. But anyway, what are the 10 things? I hope people don't go, I don't have a clue. I hope people can say, well, I don't remember all of them, but it's this and this and this and so on. It's the kind of things that I think we can get behind. So this is where I see sustainability as critical for a land-grant institution, critical for Kansas State University, but where I see us going from President is not, notice on here I didn't list 10 things that I think we need to do in a sustainability program because I don't know what those are. But I will say I think this is going to be one of those cross-cutting initiatives that's going to be critical to the success and future of Kansas State as we develop our long-term visionary plan of where we would like to go in the next 15 years. So, folks, it's been great to be here, and it's been nice to visit with you sort of out in the hall, and I'll be here certainly through Ben's presentation. And if you have things that you like that are going on, send me an email. If you don't like them, tell Noel, and she'll send them on. So, anyway, folks, thank you very much. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Let's take time for a couple questions.
Yeah.
We get it on the videotape.
Yeah, the question really was what was occurring at Mississippi State University when I was there in relation to sustainability. Mississippi State's probably a year to 18 months behind where we are currently, so they had just taken a person that was going to be in charge of campus sustainability, and that person was really doing an inventory of programming that was on campus. And as all of us know, as much as we pride ourselves in communication, my guess is there'll be something going on in one unit and they don't know about something else going on in the rest of campus. So I think the only thing I would say is it's important to have an inventory of what's occurring now at K-State so that we don't wind up funding and duplicating an outstanding effort that already is there that may not be broadly known about. And again, to repeat the question so we get this on there, it's really, should our sustainability efforts, if I can paraphrase, focus strongly on needs of the state of Kansas as Kansas Land-Grant University? I think that's really critical. I believe that the future of the state of Kansas is more closely tied to Kansas State University than any of the other institutions in the state. And I think it's important that when we look at national things that we want to bring here, we make sure that when I stand in front of the legislature or talking to taxpayers in the state or any of those folks, that when they say, well, Kirk, I've heard about this, it's the kind of thing that they say, you know, I think I might be able to use that in my business or whatever I'm doing. However, the proviso I'll have is that universities, I think, are at the cutting edge and leading. And so there's sometimes things that we do that people might not immediately say, well, I think I can use that. And so I think we need to make sure that we're advancing that front out there as well and saying, you know what, this may not look like something that you could use, but give us a year or two and I think you may find that this would be something kind of intriguing. So we need a mixture of both. All right. Nothing on athletics, too. Thank you. All right.